Welcome to Miss Retro Reads. On Wednesdays, I try to read a book geared more towards ladies or girls. So I'm going to read The Five Little Peppers and How They Grew by Margaret Sidney. The Peppers. It was the end of the day. The sun had not yet quite gone down in the west, but in the little brown house on the edge of town there were 5 Pepper children and their mother. This marked the time of day when hustle and bustle was turned to welcome quiet. Each day at this hour all the Peppers except Ben, the eldest of the young little Peppers, would settle down for what had come to be called the breathing spell. Ben Pepper, who was 11 years old, was not usually home at the twilight hour of rest and relaxation. He had a job chopping wood for Deacon Blodgett, and, somehow, there was always enough wood in the deacon's woodpile to keep the young man busy until it got dark. But despite the hard work, Ben did not mind. He knew that with each swing of the axe he was helping earn money for the Pepper household, money that would keep the family together and happy in their best beloved little brown house. It was important, Ben knew, to keep the family together because the Peppers were everything to each other, and there was now no father to take care of them. Ever since then, times had been hard. Bravely and cheerfully, Mrs. Pepper had gone to work for her 5 wonderful children, sewing and mending clothes for the townspeople in order to scrape together money enough to feed the noisy, happy brood and to pay the rent when it came due each month. Day after day, her sewing needle flew through the fabrics of coats and trousers. The work became second nature. There were times, of course, when Mrs. Pepper would sigh sorrowfully, wishing that she had more time to spend with her children, time to play games with them, time to teach them, or ever so many things. The poor dears, she would say to herself, they just haven't had a proper bringing up at all. They're just scrambled up. I must get some learning for them some way. I really must, but how? The more she thought about it, the more the question seemed unanswerable. So Mrs. Pepper would usually merely set her lips together tightly and continue her work. When winter came, it came with bone-chilling blasts of icy wind and small mountains of snow piled against the little brown house. The money earned by Mrs. Pepper and Ben went faster than ever, for it took much more to feed and clothe the 5 little Peppers. When winter passed, and the way seemed clear again for putting aside some money, the store where Mrs. Pepper worked got a new owner. With that change, however, Mrs. Pepper was not given as much work to do, and consequently her payment was less than before. The 5 little Peppers pitched in to help their mother as much as they could whenever they could. There were always household chores to do, and many of the tasks were taken up by Polly, who was 10 years old. Besides helping with the cooking, washing, and general housework, Polly would also help her mother with the sewing on hand. Ben, the eldest, was the handyman, fixing things around the little brown house before going out on his wood-chopping job at Deacon Blodgett's. Joel, Davy, Phronsie, and youngest of the Peppers, helped best when they were not doing anything. One day Polly was sitting near the window, helping Mrs. Pepper pull out basting threads from a coat she had just finished. She gave an impatient twitch to the sleeve, and a telltale snap was heard. "Have a care, Polly," said her mother, who was winding thread from the coat onto an empty spool. "The thread costs money, same as everything else, you know." "I couldn't help it, Momsey," apologized Polly. "It just broke. Everything costs so much now, it seems. I wish we had lots and lots of thread, so that we wouldn't have to save every bit like this. And I wish," she added, glancing at the window, "I wish we could have much more light, just as much as we want." "You don't need much light to see these threads," said Mrs. Pepper quietly. "But just think how nice it would be to have as much light as we wanted," persisted Polly. "I wish we had Oh, say 200 candles. Wouldn't that be wonderful? 200 candles? Exclaimed Joel, who was playing nearby. Wow! I'd have them all in a row, Polly decided, and I'd light them all at once, if I had the chance. It would be just like heaven, sighed little Davy. His eyes shone at the very thought. Likely as not, you'd set the house on fire, said Mrs. Pepper. 200 candles. Who ever heard of such a thing? Little golden-haired Phronsie got up from the floor, where, with Davy, she was watching Joel nail on the cover of an old box. 200 candles! What magnificence that would be! She looked up at the old beams that held the little brown house together. Then she glanced at the dingy walls and at the old black stove with the fire nearly out. She tried to imagine how bright, how cheerful, and how delightful it would be in the kitchen, having more candles than one could count. Would they never go out? She asked. The candles, you mean? Asked Polly. Why, Phronsie dear, if we could have them at all, we'd certainly never let them go out. And laughing, she picked up the little girl and whirled her around. Suddenly, Polly glanced at the old clock in the corner. It's 5:30 already, she gasped. Ben will be coming home soon. I'll have to be getting supper now. In the next minutes, the large table was pulled out to the middle of the kitchen floor. Dishes, cups, saucers, knives, forks, and spoons appeared on it, as if by magic, as places were set, and Polly bustled about as busily as any honey bee ever did. Just as Polly set the potato dish on the table, the door opened, and Ben came into the room. Phronsie, shrieking with joy, dashed across the room into her brother's arms. Ben hugged Phronsie tightly. Then he kissed her many times. "Oh, it's so good to be home," he declared, his blue eyes shining brightly. "Is supper ready?" "Just about," said Polly. "There's just one thing." She hurried off to get Phronsie's bib. When the meal was nearly over, Phronsie, with her mouth full of food, said, "We're going to be very rich some day, Ben." "You don't say so," said Ben. "Uh-huh, awful rich, dreadful rich." "I wish we could be rich now, then," said Ben, "in time for Momsey's birthday." "Yes," agreed Polly. "Oh, if only we could celebrate it. It would be such fun." "Now there's no need for celebration," said Mrs. Pepper, nevertheless beaming quite happily. "It's the greatest joy of all, just being together and seeing you children like this. Why, I'm as rich as can be right now, and that's a fact." Polly jumped up from her chair and ran to give her mother a big hug. "Isn't it wonderful?" she cried. "Momsey doesn't mind her 5 brothers." And in another instant all of the other little Peppers gathered round and hugged and kissed their mother too. "Mother's rich enough," repeated Mrs. Pepper, as her children clattered back to their seats around the table. "If only we can keep together, dears, so that the little brown house won't be ashamed of us. That's all I ever asked." Chapter 2. Happiness in the Making. When the table had been cleared off and pushed back against the wall, and the dishes had all been washed, wiped, and put away neatly in the cupboard, Polly took Ben aside. "Even if Momsey thinks she's rich enough," she said, "I still think we ought to try to have a celebration on her birthday, don't you?" "Yes, but how?" asked Ben. "What can we possibly do?" "I'd like to bake her a nice birthday cake, a big one, you know, with—" "But that wouldn't be a surprise at all. She'd see you making it, or else she'd smell it when it was baking," Ben interrupted. "No, she wouldn't," replied Polly. "She's going to visit Mrs. Henderson tomorrow. She'll be helping her all day, most likely. So when she comes home, everything will be ready and perfectly splendid, you'll see." "Polly, you always think of everything," said Ben, giving his sister a loving hug. The instant after Mrs. Pepper left the little brown house next morning to help the minister's wife, Polly started getting things ready for the big baking event. Ben had already gone off to take care of his chores at Deacon Blodgett's, and she was alone with Joel, David, and Phronsie. "Hurry, Polly, it's almost 11 o'clock," exclaimed Joel. "You won't have time to get it done." "Pooh, that's only 8:45", said Polly, her face red with excitement, and her arms full of wood with which to kindle the big black kitchen stove. "Phronsie, be careful. You can't lift that lid. Help her, Davy." "No, let me," cried Joel, springing forward. "Dave got the kindling for the stove. It's my turn, Polly." "All right," said Polly. She flung in the wood and poked it expertly into a heap. "There. Now it can't help but burn. Oh, what a cake we'll have for Momsey." "It'll be so big," cried Phronsie, "that Momsey won't know what to do. Will she, Polly?" "No, I guess not," said Polly happily, stuffing in more wood. "Oh dear, there goes Ben's putty. It's all fallen out." "Yes, it has," said Joel. "Polly, there's an awful big hole in the stove round at the back, and cracks too." Polly's eyes suddenly flashed angrily. "You mean ugly old thing," she shouted at the stove. "Why couldn't you just this once be nice to us?" And her eyes began to well up with tears. "Can it be fixed?" said Davy. "I'll run and get Ben," volunteered Joel. "Shall I?" "No, no, don't do that," cried Polly. "It wouldn't be right to take him from his work. Momsey wouldn't like that." "What will you do then?" asked Joel. "I don't know. Stuff it with paper, I suppose." Polly watched 2 big tears run down Phronsie's sweet face and then said, "Get some paper as quickly as you can, Joel." "There isn't any," answered Joel after some moments of rummaging, "unless we use the almanac." "Can we use that?" "Oh dear, no. Isn't there some paper in the woodshed?" "No, not any more," said little Davy. "Joel and me took it to make kites with." "Well, then, let me have the kites, brothers." "Can't," said Joel. "They all flew away, or got tore up." "Well, we really must have some paper, or something to stop up that hole and those cracks," said Polly. "I know what we can do," said little Davy suddenly. He flew out of the room, dashed upstairs, and came back with an old leather boot top, one of his most precious possessions. "If you can chip this up real fine, it'll fill those cracks. Try it." "I do believe it will," said Polly. "And you're a real good boy to give it up, Davy. It's just a splendid present to help celebrate for Momsey." "I'd give a boot top, too, if I had one," said Joel. "Of course you would, Joey. I know that," said Polly kindly. It was the work of a few minutes to chip the leather into little bits, and then, cheered on by Phronsie's crow of delight, the leather was crammed into the place at the opening of the stove. Almost at once the wood blazed up and began to burn. "Hooray!" said the Pepper children. "Now I'll have to go over to Grandma Bascom's to ask her how to make the cake. I won't be gone long, boys. You must stay here." "I'm going to hammer some nails," said Joel. "I've got lots to do." "All right, then. Davy and Phronsie will watch you." And Polly was off on her way. Grandma Bascom's cottage was not far from the little brown house, just down a lane and around a corner, and soon Polly was at the door. She opened it without knocking and walked right into the house, only because the old lady was quite hard of hearing and unable to hear an ordinary knock at the door. Grandma Bascom was sweeping the floor, which already seemed spotlessly clean, as Polly walked in. Actually, she was not Polly's grandmother. She was not really related at all, but everyone in the village had called her by that name for so long that nobody even thought of calling her anything else. "Good morning, Polly. How's your ma?" asked the old woman. "Oh, pretty well, thank you," said Polly loudly. "She's having a birthday." "A bad day?" asked Grandma, a puzzled expression on her face. "Oh my, that's too bad." "No, no," Polly shouted now. "I said Momsey's having a birthday, a birthday." "Oh, a birthday. Land's sakes, you don't say so." "Yes," said Polly, "and we're going to give her a surprise." "What's the matter with her eyes?" asked Grandma sharply. "She's been sewing too much, I reckon." "No, a surprise," shouted Polly, standing on tiptoes so as to bring her mouth closer to the old lady's ear. "I want to bake a cake for her, Grandma, a big one." "A cake?" exclaimed Grandma, dropping the big broom to fix her cap. which had been pushed awry by Polly. "Well, isn't that fine?" "Yes," said Polly, picking up the broom, "but I need your help. Won't you please tell me how to make a good one?" To be sure," cried the old lady, delighted to give some advice. "I've got lots of grand recipes, and you can take your pick of them." She shuffled off to the pantry and returned with an old tin teapot in her hand. An avalanche of paper slips tumbled out of it and onto the table as it was turned upside down. "Now here," said Grandma Bascom, selecting a tattered yellow slip, "is an elegant one, light as a feather, not too rich, and no eggs." "Oh, I couldn't have eggs," said Polly in alarm. The thought of such luxury quite overwhelmed her. "And we have only brown flour, not white, you know." "Well, you can make it with brown," said Mrs. Bascom kindly. "It'll look just fine with the raisins." "But we haven't any raisins," said Polly. "Haven't any raisins?" echoed Grandma, looking over her spectacles. "Well, now, just what are you going to put in this cake?" "Cinnamon," replied Polly. "We've got plenty of that. It will be good, I guess. Anyway, we must have a cake. There isn't any other way to celebrate Momsey's birthday." In due time another recipe was looked over and selected, and having been given many bits of advice, such as not allowing the oven to get too hot, Polly took the precious scrap of paper in her hand and ran home. Chapter 3. The Birthday Cake. As soon as she opened the kitchen door of the little brown house, Polly knew that something was wrong. Phronsie was in a big calico-covered rocking chair, crying her heart out, and Joel was trying his very best to comfort her. "What's happened?" gasped Polly, racing across the room to put her arms around the little girl. "Well, I was hammering," Joel started to explain. "Oh, Phronsie, please stop crying. Don't cry any more." "Go on," said Polly hoarsely. "Phronsie's foot just kind of got in the way," Joel blurted out. Polly took off Phronsie's shoe in a flash and then pulled off a well-worn stocking. She took hold of the toes one by one and worked them back and forth. "There isn't anything broken," said she at last. "It hurts right there," said Phronsie, through a flood of tears. She wriggled her big toe. "Poor toe," began Polly, stroking it tenderly. Just then Joe flung himself into Polly's lap in a torrent of tears, crying, "I didn't mean it, Polly. It was the hammer. Oh." There, Joey, don't feel so bad. Of course, I know you didn't mean to hurt Phronsie." And she kissed his tears away. When Phronsie saw that somebody else would cry, she stopped immediately and put a sympathetic hand on Joel's neck. "Don't cry," she said. "Does your toe ache?" At this, Joel screamed louder than ever, and Polly hardly knew what to do, for the boy's heart was almost broken. That he should have hurt Phronsie, the pet of the family, upon whom all their feelings centered, it was too much. For the next few moments Polly had all she could do in comforting him. Just as she had succeeded, the door opened and Grandma Bascom walked in. "I hope your cake ain't in the oven yet, Polly," she said. "I brought some raisins over for you. I don't want them, and they'll do so much more good in your cake. But what's happened here?" Polly showed her Phronsie's toe, which was now turning black and blue. "Land sakes! You got hit, didn't you?" And after looking at the toe more carefully, Grandma Bascom sent Joel back to her house for some healing salve. "You're so wonderfully good to us, Grandma," said Polly. "I just can't thank you enough, for the raisins and all." While Grandma Bascom treated Phronsie's foot, Polly decided to start mixing the ingredients for the cake. "Run down to the provision room and bring back some cinnamon, Joel," she said. The provision room was a shed that had been added to the side of the little brown house and was reached by a short flight of rickety steps. It had been given its name by Polly, who had declared it at the time, "It's a good place to keep provisions, even if we don't have much, and it sounds nice." "There you are, little pumpkin," said Grandma Bascom, to Phronsie, putting the final touches on a bandage. "That toe will be as good as new in no time." Then she turned to Polly. "I really must go now, dear. I left some meat cookin', but let me know how the cake came out." "I'll do better than that," promised Polly, as Joel came into the kitchen with precious supply of cinnamon. "I'll save you a piece." Step by step, Polly followed Grandma Bascom's cake recipe. Then the cake, lacking only the baking, was popped into the oven. "You'd better behave yourself now," said Polly, speaking to the stove. "We want this to be the best kind of cake." For half an hour or more, the four little Peppers sat round the stove, watching and sniffing expectantly. Then Polly said, "I think the cake should be done by now." But when she opened the oven door, she shrieked, "Oh no, the cake is getting burnt!" In an instant, the cake was taken out of the oven and set on the table. The cake upon which so many hopes had been formed was indeed quite black on top, and the center had no raisins at all, presenting instead a hollow depression. "Well now, I hope you're satisfied, you mean old thing," cried Polly, casting an icy look at the black stove. "You've only spoiled our celebration of Momsey's birthday, that's all." And with that she sat right down in the middle of the floor and began to sob pitifully. Polly was startled out of her tears by a cheerful voice saying, "Well, I never!" "It's Mrs. Beebe!" cried Davy. "See, Polly?" Polly got up quickly, brushing away her tears with the back of her hand, and explaining to their unexpected visitor, the shoemaker's wife, how disappointed they all were at the cake's pitiful appearance. "You poor dears," Mrs. Beebe said again and again. But she had a suggestion to make. "I brought over some flowers for you," she said. "They're fresh from the garden, and they're so very pretty, aren't they? Why don't you just put them on top of the cake? They'll hide the black part." "Why, the very thing!" cried Polly, her face suddenly radiant. She arranged the flowers in the hollow of the cake, and the change was wonderful. A miracle! Now, instead of a cake born of failure, there was a cake crowned with success. After Mrs. Beebe had left, the cake was carefully hidden away in the cupboard. No one must peek at it. Everyone promised, though. It seemed a great shame that the cake could not be seen and admired for the longest possible time. But of course, when Ben came home, he had to see the masterpiece, and after he had oohed and awed as often as any of them, he had to be told of the many events that had occurred and the very busy day. Phronsie asked him, "Don't you think that the stove was very naughty to make Polly cry?" "Yes, I do," said Ben. One could see that he meant it. To have Polly cry hurt him more than he cared to have Phronsie see. When Mrs. Pepper came home and was told about Phronsie's accident, so busy was she in comforting her little baby that then assuring Joel that he was quite forgiven, that she would not have guessed it, there were a dozen cakes in the cupboard. So it was the best of all possible surprises when the cake was finally produced and set in its place of honor in the center of the table, as the five little Peppers all sang out happy birthday. Oh, how pleased Mrs. Pepper was when the full glory of the table burst upon her. She admired the cake from every angle, saying again and again how she would not even have expected such a beautiful and wonderful surprise, as a result coming from the old stove. Then she cut it and gave a piece of the cake to every child, and each piece had a little flower on top. When eaten, the cake proved to be even better than it looked, and so it turned out to be quite a surprise after all. We will continue this story next Wednesday, and thanks for listening to Miss Retro Reads.